Hey, so it's 2 days later, and I'm finally doing the second part, and it got a lot colder. So, uh, it's, December 30th. Um, so anyway, since I ended the last one basically with um, my thoughts immediately after seeing the film for twice, yeah. So up till that Monday of opening weekend. I guess I'll mention that as I continued thinking about it uh, for the rest of the week, and then, well, many weeks after that, um, it only got worse and worse and worse, and it never stopped getting worse. But by that Friday, so exactly 1 week from opening day, I had come to the conclusion that that TLJ was an absolute betrayal of Star Wars, of Star Wars fans, of storytelling, of movies, and a betrayal of everything it could possibly be a betrayal of. Um, and therefore, Disney and Lucasfilm were traitors. And so I took all of my Disney and Lucasfilm, or all my Disney Star Wars stuff, and trashed it. Loaded it all up into the car, took it to the dump, and got rid of it. And all the movies, the books, the action figures, shirts, music, yeah, got rid of all of it, and did not look back. Totally turned my back on Disney and Disney Lucasfilm. And I wasn't the only one. There are plenty of other people who um, enjoyed TFA, and it went in with high hopes, and came out eventually. For some people it was faster. For some people it took a little bit longer. Um, but there are people who, like I said, enjoyed the Force Awakens going in, never watched the Force Awakens again after TLJ, and that sort of reversal, that sort of going from you know fully embracing and supporting something to completely rejecting it. That doesn't happen for no reason. That has to be something pretty impactful there. Something pretty pretty strong motivations, pretty strong yeah, reasons. That's, I guess, the word I was going for. Um, and so yeah, the backlash was surprising. It was a shock to everyone involved in the backlash, except maybe a couple, but for the great majority, it was a shock. Um, and so I'll go ahead and continue reading this stuff that I'm so terrible at reading. Um, and let's see, this, I guess the first one will be the 20 dated the 26th of January 2018. So here we go. Before delving into the particulars of The Last Jedi, let us acknowledge a few things. First, this movie is the middle part of a trilogy, which gives it certain disadvantages and certain advantages. Since it is the middle part of a three-act structure, it does not have a proper beginning or end. As a consequence, it necessarily lacks both the thrill of novelty that belongs to the first act and the thrill of the climax which belongs to the third act. We cannot expect it to wrap up or explain every plot and character. At the same time, as a sequel, it has the advantage that it doesn't have to make everything up from scratch. The basic characters, plots, and world structure have already been established, which also means that it has the obligation to be true to those previously established things, and to develop them in a reasonable and interesting way. It must carry on the story that was begun in the first installment. Second, this movie is inevitably compared to The Empire Strikes Back. Indeed, since it directly references that film, we cannot avoid bringing it up. But there is one way in which it cannot be fairly compared to Empire. When Empire came out, Star Wars was still brand new. There had only been one movie, which would not be given the episode 4 subtitle for another year. And many professionals still considered it a one-hit wonder. Star Wars 2 could have gone in various directions. It could have been like Splinter of the Mind's Eye, or Shudder, the Holiday Special. The point is that the galaxy was not firmly established yet. The characters could have been developed in various ways or not developed at all. The sequel to Star Wars could have been a rehash of Star Wars, which would have been the safe play by Hollywood terms. If you look at, say, Mission Impossible 2 or A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, you will see how a sequel can go completely the wrong direction. And that could have happened to Star Wars, but it didn't. Instead, we got one of the greatest sequels ever made, which developed the characters, introduced important new ones, reinforced our understanding of the Force, and helped to truly establish Star Wars as the powerhouse franchise it would become. Or, to put it another way, it helped write the rules of Star Wars. The Last Jedi, on the other hand, came after 7 movies, 8 if you want to include Rogue One, and nearly 40 years of development in this galaxy. Third, all movies have flaws. All Star Wars movies have flaws. We tend to dismiss them as long as the movie does most of the main things right. So, how does one approach critiquing a film which manages to be nothing but flaws? Let us begin with the fact that this is a sequel and see how well it carries forward things begun in The Force Awakens. To try to keep this a manageable length, I'll put it this way. The main plot of TFA was people trying to find, or preventing people from finding, Luke Skywalker. He was a huge deal. In TLJ, he is completely unimportant. You could take him out of the movie without affecting it. Further, Luke was found using a map which he had left behind. Yet in TLJ, he claims that he did not want to be found, which makes the statement that he came to the most unfindable place in the galaxy to die. When he makes the statement that he came to the most unfindable place to die, the map is never mentioned. Yes, I know it is never specifically stated that Luke himself left the map, but who else could have done it? In TFA, Kylo Ren has an obsession with his grandfather in the role of Darth Vader, and he is the master of the Knights of Ren. Neither things are mentioned in TLJ. In TFA, Rey is a bit of a mystery. She desperately wants a family. The matter of her lineage is made a point of interest, and she suddenly develops significant Force powers and abilities. In TLJ, her lineage and amazing powers are both treated as unimportant. So instead of being powerful and interesting, she is powerful and uninteresting. In TFA, Snoke is introduced as the imposing guy in charge of the First Order. He seems, in that film, to command great respect and loyalty from those he commands, without being terribly violent or threatening. So how did he come to such power? What are his plans? What are his ambitions? What is his philosophy? What is his ultimate goal? None of those questions are answered or even touched upon in TLJ. In TFA, the First Order was essentially a well-funded terrorist organization. In TLJ, it seems to be the main military power in the galaxy. How did this happen? The movie doesn't care. Let's see. Okay, that's there was one more paragraph that wasn't worth reading. If any of this is worth reading. Let's see, what next? What next? This one. Okay, this is. Oh, wait a minute. No. This one. I'm keeping this in chronological order. This is dated April 28th, 2018. Okay. The theme of The Last Jedi is not failure, as some have suggested. The theme of The Last Jedi is valuelessness, that nothing matters. To every question pertaining to character or story, the movie's answer is, it doesn't matter. To every why, how, what, the movie says, doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. That is the main reason why the movie feels so frustratingly hollow. Looking at the political side of things, there are the questions of how was the new republic organized, and what was the range of its influence? What repercussions did the destruction of Hosnian Prime have on the galaxy? Where did the First Order come from, and what are its objectives? Who is Snoke? Where did he come from? What are his objectives? Does he desire to rule the galaxy like the Emperor? Or is he more like the Joker and just wants to watch everything burn? We are never given answers to those questions because they don't matter. With the character of Rey, there are various points that can be brought up, such as she has been obsessed with her family. She had been staying on Jakku in the hopes that her family would come back there. And when in the Hall of Mirrors on Ahch-To, she asked to see her family. Then, finally, Kylo tells her the secret of her parents, that they were low-life drunkards who sold her for drinking money. How does that revelation affect Rey? It doesn't. She looks sad for a moment, and then is back to normal. Because it doesn't matter. Also, she and Kylo work together to defeat the Praetorian Guards. How does that affect their relationship? It doesn't. They're right back to where they were on the elevator. Because these things have no impact on anything else, because nothing has any real value, because nothing matters. And by the end of the movie, who is Rey as a character? What are her motives? What are her objectives? What are her struggles? Guess what? She doesn't have any, because none of that stuff matters. What does matter is rejection of the past, all of it. The wisdom of our elders doesn't exist. All you need is already in you, something Ghost Yoda actually says concerning Rey. That is why she sees only her own reflection in the mirror. That is why she gives up on and leaves Luke, after he has taught her zilch about using the Force. All she needs is herself, because you're perfect in your own way, because the Force makes no mistakes. You're on the right track, baby, you were born this way. With Luke, there is the huge question of how he got to the point where he was willing to mind rape his nephew and then instantly consider killing his nephew. These are not the actions of the man we last saw in Return of the Jedi, nor are they the actions of a wise Jedi Master. So what happened? That doesn't matter. And when Luke does, when Luke does the Force projection at the end, why doesn't he use that opportunity to try to win Ben back? Well, that might actually add dramatic weight to the scene, and we can't have that. People might get the impression that there's some significance to it, and jokes are so much more important than that. That's as far as that one goes. Of course, when I was near the beginning, when I was talking about how was the Republic organized and what was the range of its influence, to be perfectly fair, those are questions that should have been addressed in The Force Awakens. But so anyway, so one more. Well, am I going to read that one anyway? Yeah, this is going to be long. I gotta say, gotta get everything out in this video so I can never address this subject ever again. I've been putting this off for a long time. Anyway, this one is dated May the 10th, 2010. I would like to start this essay with a quote from Daisy Ridley, a quote which I think speaks volumes, and to which I will refer back several times in this essay. Now, my source for this quote is an article published at comicbook.com on February 14th, 2018, though the original source seems to be Hertfordshire Life. It goes, "This is where it proves that I am not the center," Ridley shared with Hertfordshire Life. "It's not based around my character. It's so much bigger than me. That's an understatement. I'm like a cog in the machine." When I first read this, I thought that she was spot on concerning Rey, that she is a cog in the machine, and have since become even more convinced as to the accuracy of that part of the statement. But I was puzzled by the "it's so much bigger" part. Bigger? This movie is incredibly small and hollow, which reminds me of another thing. Even when I was trying to like this movie, in my 2 viewings in the theater, I was struck by the fact that it felt small, that it felt visually small. It felt like it looked like it was filmed in a snow globe or something. I was like, this is weird. I've never had a Star Wars movie look small before. And also the color palette was very, very limited and very boring, and so that's how I came to describe the visual quality of the film. Small and dull. So, anyway, this movie is incredibly small and hollow. What in the galaxy could she mean by bigger? As I continued thinking about the movie in general, I started to see a possible explanation. The following is what I have come up with so far. Now let me back up a bit. When I went to see The Last Jedi, I was extremely excited and wanted and expected to enjoy it. I came out confused. What was that? I went again 2 days later to see it again, hoping that I would understand it better and like it more. It did not improve. It took another day or two to accept the fact that I strongly disliked this film. Why? How could I dislike a Star Wars movie? And how could I dislike it this much? I thought it over and have not stopped thinking it over to this day. And the word which I quickly came to use in describing the film was nihilistic. I still think it is the most accurate word to use to sum up TLJ. Nihilistic, from the Latin nihil, meaning nothing, has 2 basic meanings. One is simply the rejection of the idea that anything has worth or meaning, a belief in nothing. The second is the social extension of this, and is the rejection of all established systems of government or religion, or any other system. TLJ is thoroughly nihilistic in both ways. The easiest of these to see is the second. Both Luke and Kylo Ren repeatedly promote the rejection of the past. And since there is no one in the movie who contradicts that view, it therefore becomes a main theme of the film. This is something that was felt very strongly by longtime fans of the franchise. Here was a Star Wars movie that was telling them to renounce Star Wars, to kill the past. What? But its treachery was deeper still, and has nothing to do with Luke drinking very fresh milk, which I have no problem with. Let's go over this film piece by piece to see how it is nihilistic in its very structure. Let's start at the beginning, the opening crawl. It reads as follows. The First Order reigns. Having decimated the peaceful Republic, Supreme Leader Snoke now deploys his merciless legions to seize military control of the galaxy. Only General Leia Organa's band of resistance fighters stand against the rising tyranny, certain that Jedi Master Luke Skywalker will return and restore a spark of hope to the fight. But the resistance has been exposed, and as the First Order speeds toward the rebel base, The brave heroes mount a desperate escape. Okay, first line. How does the First Order reign? Yes, Hosnian Prime was blown up in TFA, but we still have no idea of the extent, influence, or power of the Republic. All we have is C-3PO saying, without the Republic fleet, we're doomed. Which suggests that the entire military might of the Republic was concentrated at Hosnian Prime, which makes no sense. And where are these merciless legions that are taking over the galaxy? We never see or hear any evidence of them. In the original trilogy, the setup was pretty simple and instantly understandable. The villain was the government, a legitimate government which had turned tyrannical. The heroes were the outlaws who were opposing and fighting that government. In TFA, the legitimate government was the Republic, the good guys. The Resistance was a military faction of that government, as far as the movie is concerned. The bad guys, the First Order, was basically an overfunded terrorist group, as far as we could tell. How does all of that work? And now simply because Hosnian Prime was blown up, the First Order can take over? That's like having the rebellion take over the galaxy after blowing up the first Death Star. Second line. How can the Resistance fighters stand up against the rising tyranny when they're busy running for their lives? Third line. So the Resistance base is now the Rebel base? Is the First Order already the official government, which would turn the Resistance against an invading force into a rebellion against the ruling regime? Now let's go to the very first scene. The opening crawl ends. The camera pans down to show some ships, one big one and three small, over top of Dakar. Then the camera suddenly zooms in at a diagonal. It's a cool shot. Then we have a sudden cut to the surface of Dakar and Connex saying something about not having time. The point here is that the cool zoom is pointless. It doesn't lead us anywhere. It doesn't continue until it reaches the bridge of the Radis or until it reaches the surface of Dakar. It serves no other purpose other than to look cool. Some may say its purpose is excitement, to get the adrenaline going. Then why do we pause for a call waiting joke? The pacing is jarring, because pacing doesn't matter, and shots don't need to connect to anything. It's all meaningless. Speaking of the call waiting joke, the joke itself is not the problem. I think it actually fits into Poe's humor, which was established in TFA. It's not dissimilar from, so who talks first? You talk first, I talk first? The problem is that it doesn't make sense in the scene. Why couldn't Poe have charged the afterburner before he got to the dreadnought? Did he actually need the afterburner anyway, given what a great pilot he is and what a terrible shot the First Order is? And why, if the First Order was only there to obliterate the Resistance anyway, did they not just blow Poe out of the sky as soon as he showed up? It only serves to make Hux look like an incompetent buffoon, turning him into the joke that he will be for the rest of the film. And this is actually the best developed character in the movie. And what is the supposed purpose of that entire scene anyway? Isn't it to clear away threats so that the bombers can safely move in and take out the dreadnought? If so, that worked well. Oh, that's right. It was to give time for the last transport to get away from Dakar. Damn this movie and its obsession with making delay the most important plot point. But again, if Hux had just gone ahead and fired on everything Resistance related as soon as possible, that wouldn't be an issue. The entire First Order versus Resistance plot could have been over and done with in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Then there's the other gag in the scene, BB-8 trying to fix whatever he was trying to fix. It's a plumbing joke transferred to an electrical problem. That doesn't work. You can't hold back or reroute electricity the same way you can water. The most uneducated layman knows that. At least BB-8 slamming his head into the panel is based on the idea that you can get a machine to work by hitting it, like Han hitting the Falcon in Empire. But plugging the electrical leak? No. By the way, shouldn't that have electrocuted BB-8? R2D2 was electrocuted when he mistook a power socket for a computer terminal in Empire. Um, I'll skip the whole dropping bombs in space thing. Poe disobeying Leia is bad. You don't disobey Leia. And as a result, he did get a lot of people killed. They may have died later, but that's beside the point. So his demotion was, as I see it, justified. It's also kind of irrelevant. Since when has Leia ever put any stock in military rank? And that's where that one ends. And I got one more. This was, yeah. This was actually something I wrote to post on Rotten Tomatoes. I wanted to put this on Rotten Tomatoes, and I couldn't get it to take. I hit submit or whatever you hit, and it wouldn't go. So this is dated September 1st, 2018, and man, I got much worse things to say about this movie than I've been saying in these things, even up to this point in September. Anyway, this is what I wrote, and then I'll be done with this reading. This movie is a masterpiece of nihilism, a masterpiece of terrible, a masterpiece of wrong. Between December 15th and December 2015 and December 2017, I saw The Force Awakens 38 times. I was a huge fan of it and came to think of my reviewings as getting my Rey fix, because I loved Rey. I also enjoyed Rogue One. I realized they had flaws, most movies do, but I was quite willing to forgive them. You'd have been hard-pressed to find a bigger Disney Star Wars fan than I was. Then I saw The Last Jedi, twice. Now I am done with Disney Star Wars. This is not a Star Wars movie. This is an anti-Star Wars movie. It is the perfect antithesis to Star Wars, with a thin Star Wars veneer. I call it a movie because, strictly speaking, visuals do move, but it is not a movie in the sense of having a developing plot and characters. What passes for a plot is extremely stupid, boring, and pointless. There are no characters at all. In an interview with the Hertfordshire Life, Daisy Ridley referred to Rey in TLJ as a cog in the machine. That is the most accurate statement made by anyone associated with this film. All of the characters are merely cogs in the machine of progressivist, nihilistic propaganda. That's what this is. Not entertainment, not classic storytelling, but propaganda. TLJ is so incredibly bad that it actually ruins what came before it, and after. It retroactively makes The Force Awakens terrible, and makes a mockery of the George Lucas saga. I cannot exaggerate how damaging this thing is. It is so thoroughly nihilistic that by the time the end credits roll, there is absolutely nothing left to care about, and therefore no reason to be interested in 9. As a lover of good stories, a lover of movies, and a lover of Star Wars, I completely abhor and reject this movie. Retroactively makes The Force Awakens terrible. Well, it already kind of had its own problems, but yeah. In calling it a masterpiece of nihilism, propaganda is that leads on to the last thing I want to talk about, and which is that I came to see how, I've already stated at the beginning of the video that there was never, in my thinking it over for weeks and months, there was never a point where the problem stopped. All right, there was never a point where it stopped getting worse. I came to realize that this thing was perfectly wrong, perfectly terrible. It's called a masterpiece. It's accurate, but it's a masterpiece in all the wrong ways. It's and you know, when people were saying it was a mess, or that Ryan Johnson was a hack and never seen Star Wars, and trying to insult him and insult the movie in kind of the normal bad movie way, I think they were completely off the mark. I totally disagree with those jabs. I think Ryan Johnson is clearly a very talented filmmaker. Um, I was a fan. Before TLJ, I was a fan. I wasn't a fan of Brick, but I loved the Brothers Bloom, and I really enjoyed Looper. Um, that Of course, after TLJ came out, I threw those movies away. But my opinion of him as being talented, it certainly hasn't changed. It only went up, because I would even call TLJ a work of genius. However, I would call it a work of evil genius. Um, and I mean that quite literally, as you'll find out, because you have to know the rules very, very well to break every single one of them. You have to know Star Wars very, very well to deconstruct and insult and tear apart and turn into completely something else. It's there's no way a person that wasn't familiar with Star Wars can make TLJ. There's no way someone who's not talented could have made TLJ. And there was a video, I think, by, what was it, Clownfish or someone else, saying that episode 8 was always going to be bad because The Force Awakens was such a shaky foundation that JJ didn't give JJ much to work with, and therefore it was never going to be good. And I don't think I ever even watched the video all the way through at the time, and I certainly haven't watched it since, but I think there was the idea in there that maybe Ryan Johnson was basically giving JJ the finger, saying, you didn't give me much at all to work with, man. Well, fuck you. I'm just gonna tear down everything you did do. I think that's nonsense. That's not, the outcome doesn't reflect those ideas. First of all, if it were just some kind of petty one director being mad at the other one and taking shots at the previous director's contribution, Ryan Johnson may be the writer director of the film, but he's still in someone else's employ, using someone else's money. And if Kathleen Kennedy or Bob Iger, saw that there was some kind of petty, mess of a film being made, they could have put a stop to that. They could have slapped Ryan Johnson on the hand and say, this needs to stop. You need to do better. And there would have been a bunch of reshoots to fix it up. That didn't happen, though. In fact, they had nothing but praise for Ryan Johnson, and there were no reshoots at all. If I remember, it's just a very smooth shoot, which meant that Ryan Johnson was doing exactly what they wanted him to do. Also, if Ryan Johnson, it's true that with the shaky foundation of, or even you might say lack of foundation of TFA, the sequel trilogy could never or the Disney trilogy, could never have been great with that start. But it could have been okay. There was no reason for it to be terrible. It could have been okay. It could have been passable. It could have been passable entertainment, even if it wasn't, you know, you know, great Star Wars. It could have been okay. Um, so I think the episode 8 was always going to be bad. I think that's a lame excuse, especially when you have someone as talented as Ryan Johnson. Um, and again, the movie doesn't reflect any type of uh, behind the scenes fighting or any type of behind the scenes disappointment with what he was handed to him, whatever. The movie is it's not a mess. I say that it's not a messy movie. It's a very well constructed film. It's just very well constructed in all the wrong ways. It's very consistent. And that's one of the things that really stuck out is just how consistently wrong it is. And that consistency is, I've already mentioned in these things, in nihilism and nothing matters, it's destruction. The Last Jedi is a love letter to destruction. It is absolutely obsessed with destruction. It worships destruction. It absolutely worships destruction from beginning to end. It destroys everything it touches, and self-destruction at the same time. It's a black hole, and it's and that kind of worship of destruction, that kind of dedication to destruction. There's only really one word to describe that sort of thing properly, and that is demonic. And I came to realize that this movie is demonic, and this is where I lose everyone who's actually listening. But whatever, this is what I truly think. So, whatever. Yeah, people. You hear people talk about the culture war. People who are in the entertainment sphere, maybe the more conservative side of it, or traditional side of it, or whatever, talking about the culture war. And they make some good points, but what they fail to recognize, or what they refuse to recognize, is that the culture war is a religious war. And until they recognize that as a religious war, they're really not going to understand what's going on in the world today. And because it is, very much, and you don't go for these type of explanations automatically, right? Normally, you go for the most obvious explanations, the most down to earth explanations, the most common explanations for things. But when those common explanations don't suffice, you go for other ones. And the regular explanations do not suffice for this. And given that, and given the fact that this thing is is just such a perfectly crafted worship of destruction, I came to firmly believe that this movie is demonic. And I came to believe that, Disney is demonic. Disney is absolutely evil. Not just because of The Last Jedi, but because of other things as well. It hasn't been a company for a long time. Disney is, certainly since like Frozen onwards, its MO has, it has been, its purpose has been not entertainment, but its purpose has been cultural destruction and mental re-engineering, or sociological, psychological re-engineering. promoting certain agendas and also just scrambling people's brains. Um, and it's also why they've remade so many of their movies. Not because um, of a creative bankruptcy, not to make a quick buck because of title recognition, which granted is a reason why remakes get made, is because it's easy to promote them because people already recognize it and they're automatically kind of curious because of that. Um, but the purpose, the reason why Disney has been remaking or remade a bunch of their classic films is to destroy their own contributions to culture. Um, you know, I'm sure you remember when TLJ came out. People were baffled, man, by this thing. Like, how does this thing exist? Why does this exist? What this doesn't make any sense from a business point of view. No, it doesn't, because this is not Disney is a business in our normal world, in our under normal business, normal entertainment um, procedures and motivations. This movie wouldn't exist. You can't explain it out without going into to motivations and purposes that have absolutely nothing to do with money. Or just normal, have anything to do with anything mundane, anything earthly. Um, so yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to bring up and talk about. Is that this movie is evil, and it, Disney's been, well, Hollywood in general, but Disney especially has been making horrible things ever since. And some of the things afterwards may be worse than The Last Jedi in terms of specific agendas being pushed, but I don't think anything can actually be worse than The Last Jedi. I think it's impossible to be worse than The Last Jedi in terms of actual storytelling, actual plotting and characters, because it is, as I've said, perfectly wrong, perfectly destructive. Um, and so I came to that conclusion, and and it changed me because for it also kind of made me realize something I didn't want to realize, which is that demons actually are active in our world. I was brought up Catholic, so I was raised to believe in hell and demons and all that, and I still do more than ever. But I never really bought into the demons really being all that active in the human world. Or I never bought into demonic conspiracies or any of that stuff. I thought the people talking about that sort of thing were nuts, and I still kind of do. I still don't. I don't like conspiracy theorists. I don't, but I never. I no longer think that everything they've said is wrong. I still don't listen to them, but yeah, I was like, demons exist, but we all have our personal demon. But I think human beings are perfectly capable of doing all kinds of horrible things by themselves. Um, without demons arranging things and helping things along, whatever. Um, but with TLJ, I was like, there's demons here. There definitely demons, very, very, very active in the world. So that changed my perspective. That and then the events of 2020 really changed my perspective on things, and changed me. And the person I was 10 years ago doesn't exist anymore, and I still don't know who the person is who has replaced them, honestly. Um, but yeah. So I hope I've said everything I intended to say, because I'm moving on from this and moving on to stuff I actually enjoy talking about. I'd rather do that. So anyway, if you actually listen to this whole thing, then well, obviously you did if you're hearing me say this. But give yourself a cookie, have a couple of drinks, um, and yeah. Thanks for listening. Bye.